Hey, everybody, and welcome to Boss Talks. I'm your host, Evan Happel. I have a great guest for you today, Kelsi Cory. She is with a company she started called Cory Executive Recruiting. She's been at it in general in the staffing industry, executive recruiting, and all that for 18 years, or 18 years, not 18 years. She was 18 years old when she started it, but I think it's been 12 years. Is that correct? Yes. Head shake. Yes. Okay. So 12 years. Let's get that correct. But 18 years old, first of all, is when she went into this, which I think is wild. Um, I wasn't doing anything remotely serious at 18 years old. So I don't know how that happened for her, but we're definitely going to learn about it, how she started her business and the work and grit she's put into getting it going and the success she is having because of it. So super excited to have her. Only been able to talk to her once, seen her online, and I didn't really like pay attention until recently. And then I realized she's doing awesome things and just super excited to connect with her. And we basically have decided we're now best friends. So hope you guys all can have fun with us as we continue to bond over our commonalities and the way we're wired, but also just get to know Kelsi better. And we'll have a great show today as a result. So in a moment, we'll get there. But first, again, Evan Happel with the Community Boss. We have a great solution for you when it comes to generating revenue. Maybe you have some issues with your parking and you need to manage it better. Well, we got some great solutions for you when it comes to software that can really manage your physical spaces. So that's Parking Boss, Amenity Boss, Welcome Boss, even some maps. So if you have any of those issues or you just want to make a better experience for your communities, reach out. Let's talk, make it happen. But today it's about Kelsi. So let's get to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Evan. I'm so glad to be a part of your show. When you asked me, I was like, let's do it. Let's have a fun, engaging conversation. We'll see where it lands. And I think what you're doing at your company and all the things you guys have been able to accomplish, I can't wait to dive in more and be able to help support you guys along the way as well.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And after getting to know you more and just like, I mean, there's a few people out there that have a large following on LinkedIn and stuff like
Sure.
that. But you've built amongst multiple pages really organically and people just choosing to follow you. You yourself have close to 30,000
Yes.
followers slash connections. Your company page also does. And then you have another one that's growing as well. So really fantastic because honestly,
Thank you.
like most people, when they're growing those, they're like asking people to join it.
Right.
And you've
Sure.
told me it's just happening,
Yes, yes. I
which
have not
is
used the
wild.
feature yet. Maybe this year we will try it, for the live event. I'm not gonna lie, it was like the first time I'm like, oh, you send invites to people. Okay, cool. But no, we've never, everything we've done has been all organic. Nothing's been paid. It's just we show up, we push out some really what we feel is great content. And if it resonates with people, which apparently, it has been, and we just continue to say, we're gonna show up regardless. And it's really cool to see, like, we've just, like, collectively under the Cory brand, we're under 100,000 followers across all of our platforms. And, we just can't wait to see what this year has to bring. And I mean, it's honestly an honor and a privilege to be able to serve this community. It's one of, I'm biased. I absolutely love the real estate industry, as you said, at 18. It's kind of wild to think back. I'm like, gosh, I wish I was 18 again. But it's just crazy to see like where we've been and how I've grown throughout this year, and then been able to meet incredible leaders like yourself inside the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for being here and sharing yourself with us and
Yeah.
my audience, and just super excited to dive in with you.
Cool.
All right. So before we get into all things Kelsi and just your story and everything, I have a few questions I like to ask. The
Okay.
first being, when it comes to parking, what is your, and now again, you haven't been an on-site manager or anything like that,
Sure.
but you have lived in apartments. So
Yes.
what has been your experience around parking? Maybe you have a funny story about it. I don't know. Like,
Oh
take the
man,
floor.
funny stories. Okay, yes. So a little background. I've lived in apartments, I would say most of my life,
Oh wow.
which is one of the reasons why it just felt so natural for me, I guess, like entering into that industry. But I would say most recent, I was living at a lease up, actually in Denver, Colorado, and they have parking there, right? And so, of course, it was one of those things that what do you love about it and what do you wish was better? And what I loved about it is that you don't have to be in the snow, right? When it's -9-degree weather. That's one of the most biggest advantages, not having to wake up extra early, especially with an 18-month-old, and,
Mm,
getting your car all ready to go and getting prepped to go out for the day. So I love that. I mean, for me, it's a huge plus. But I also think like one of the things that I always look for personally whenever I see any type of parking garage condition is safety, especially as a woman inside of a parking garage. That's like a big thing. And then also the accessibility, to the door that like it allows you to enter into the apartment building. And how far is that from like your actual, I guess, like parking spot that you have designated for you? And so the other thing too that I've learned is when you're in a new lease up, it's nice because you have lots of room to be able to park anywhere. But as that community starts getting leased up and there's a lot more residents moving in, all of a sudden your favorite parking spot starts, you kind of start being like, okay, you go head and head. Like, okay, I was there first, or who was there first. And then you have to kind of decide, I'm going to choose a different spot. So I would say maybe in the beginning it's probably good just to like have a designated spot versus
mm,
it's open, because then you just get used to that versus like, oh no, there's so many more cars and I gotta rush to get there, but
right.
beat everybody, especially with a little one. And we had to bring we had to eventually buy a wagon because we had to bring everything into the house. So the garage is awesome, but there's always different things that you have to think about logistics wise, that I wasn't used to at first. And now I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm a pro. So I'm like, kudos to parking because great parking is everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. And something that my guest last week actually brought up is
Uh-huh.
just basically online reviews and things. If people are talking about parking, it's because
Mhm.
it's bad.
Yes. Yes. That is a red flag. Like if you see
Yeah.
that that's a very commentary thing like on there, is it gonna probably be solved right then and there? Who knows? Very unlikely that it's going to be, but it's definitely something you want to be asking the leasing office and how they're navigating that, because I lived in Cap Hill in Denver, and so I appreciate parking because I used to have to street park. And I will not
Mm,
lie, there was a time I had to Uber to my house because we have to park so far. And it's like, I do not miss those days. That's why underground parking or just any type of designated parking is a massive plus whenever it comes to like decision making and where you're going to live.
yeah. No, it is. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Uh, People don't really think about it until it's a problem, but in
Yeah.
general, having a plan around your parking is very important. So,
Yes.
if you need to talk to somebody, here you go.
Yes. Evan's your guy. Yep.
Yeah. Well, all right. Thanks for answering the question. And then next, when it comes to music,
Oh
what
gosh.
is your go-to music song, um,
Okay.
type of music to get going, get you motivated?
Yeah.
Uh,
Let me look it up. Okay, because I knew this question was probably coming. And oh, I accidentally played it. There's I don't know if it's a new song, it's a new song for me. It's
uh-huh.
called Sailor Song.
Okay.
And I really like love it. I will be honest, I listened to that even before we hopped on here. And I guess it's by Gigi Perez. So again,
Okay.
I don't know if it's new or not, but I heard it on the radio. So I have a feeling it is something new that came on. And I was like, this is my jam. But I like all types of music. I mean, I grew up with my dad and he listened to everything. A lot of I would say now I'm drawing a blank what the names are because I'm terrible with that kind of stuff. But
Me too.
everything besides country, I suppose, or like hard rock, I really like. I'm open to it. I think it depends on the mood that you're in and the vibe you're going for. So I'm usually kind of like basing it off of that, but I'm pretty open minded. And the reason why I don't know a lot of like movies or songs is because growing up, I didn't really my parents didn't really share a lot of that with me. Like it
Hmm.
was very I would say maybe sheltered or censored, and so
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
actually have the opportunity. And then when I like turned 18 and all that, I just didn't like it didn't resonate with me. I just liked a song and I'm like, great, I just know I got to make sure I love it before I forget about what song it was. So
Right.
kind of funny. That's a big part of the reason why I'm like, oh gosh, I'm dreading that question because I don't know.
Yeah. I learned something new because I'm similar. I don't really like pay attention to the name, the artist,
Yeah, right.
anything. I'm just like, I like this. That's
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And so I learned something, and maybe you already know about this, but like you can hum into your phone, like into Siri or other things,
yeah.
and it will let you hum and it will find that song.
Okay, how accurate has that been for you?
It actually nailed it.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll try it. I'll give it a go.
'Cause I
I'll
was
try
like,
it.
"I don't know what this song is," and then I
I
just
know.
and my
Yeah.
my kids were like, "Why do you keep singing or humming that song?" And I'm like, "I don't know, it's just in my head, but I don't even know what it is."
Yeah, yeah, then it comes on, you're like, "Yes, perfect. It's the one I've been looking for." Yeah, that's awesome. I gotta try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I ask the music song because people are very interested in it, and I like to learn about music from other people,
Yeah,
but it's not like something that I personally have a song, or I just kinda have it in the background as kind of this
yeah,
atmosphere, I guess. Um,
exactly.
anyways, yeah.
I resonate with you on that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and then final question, when it comes to caffeine, what is your go-to beverage of choice?
Oh, I love coffee. I love, 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 love coffee. If I don't have coffee at 5 AM, it's not it's going to be a difficult day. So I'm pretty basic, like it's so funny when I go to Starbucks and they're like, and I buy their coffee and they're like, well, do you want to, ground it up? And it's like, but what kind of coffee maker do you have? I said, I don't know, the old school one, just the basic, like just a basic coffee. I just need you to grind it up however that looks. But I love dark roast coffee. I have It's really weird. I used to truly love craft coffee, like going into
Mm,
local coffee shops, and I still do. But I later learned that, you know what? I just like the bitter, dark roast coffee. So I've stuck with that for several years now. And I'm not really into like, honestly, all I drink is water and coffee. I stopped drinking soda a long time ago. Like, it's been over a decade, I guess, since I stopped drinking soda
oh, wow.
and any other type of energy drink. So that was just a personal preference. And that's why I'm like, if I don't have the coffee, especially on vacation, I'm like, we got to make sure we go to the store to make sure we stock up. So, yes, that's a good question.
Yeah. How many cups a day?
Well, I had this discussion with somebody. So, I would say definitely one for sure, but I always tend to go for a second, but then I forget about it. So then I go and heat it up, and then I
Mhm.
drink a couple sips, and then I'm like, oh, I forgot about it again. So then I go heat it up, and then I'm back, and I'm like, I don't want that. It's already noon. I'm done. So I have like this habitual routine that I've got to cut because it's like ridiculous. I'm wasting so much coffee, and I have not worked on it. Let's just be honest. Like I haven't worked on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually drink 1. There was a time I was working in an office, and
Yeah.
they had free flowing coffee, and they
Yeah.
had a fridge full of, like, 20
Yes,
different
delicious.
flavors of creamer, and
Oh, yeah.
so I was not used to working in an office. I've
Yeah.
always been remote and sales and stuff like that, and so
Sure.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." So I'd go, like, take, like, 5 trips to the break room getting coffee during the day, and then eventually I was like, "I feel like garbage. Why do I
Yeah.
feel like garbage?" 5 cups of coffee will make you feel like garbage.
Oh my gosh, 5 cups of coffee? You're crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Andrea on our team, I don't think she does this as much, or maybe she does, she hasn't told me. She just drinks straight up espresso, like,
Oh, wow.
just but I mean multiple. And I'm like, and she's also done Red Bull, and I'm like, girl, I cannot keep up on your level. Like, but that's why she's absolutely phenomenal, guys. Like, we have it even on our website. Like, we're fueled by, coffee and Red Bull. So there you have it. We're transparent.
Hold a second. I need to go get my coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Let me go warm it up for the 5th time today, please.
That's funny. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. You made it through. Now it's time to get to the subject you know best, and that's yourself. So let's get right into it.
Okay. Where do you want me to start? I
Well,
guess.
I just want to know your story more. I've heard a little bit about it. I thought it was super awesome, inspiring personally. Um, I
Thank
mean, I've seen you post on the internet. I thought your stuff was good, but I wasn't paying attention to the
Yeah,
nuances, and I didn't know you at all. So it's
right.
like, so you were just a talking head at that point. To be honest,
Sure.
let's be.
Yeah.
You're a person on LinkedIn, like.
Yep. Exactly.
And then we met, and I was talking to you, and you were sharing your story, how you started, how you got into this at such a young age, and then jumped into starting your own business. But I don't want to steal your thunder. I want you to tell the story of how you got
Okay.
into this, how you got going.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing this platform too. It's actually really cool to be able to kind of, I guess, like really give a true backstory. And there's different multiple layers, right? That we can go into this in different ways and verticals. But I guess like I can kind of start with ultimately when I was 18 and what direction did that take me up to this day? And then even more of the backstory that led me, I guess, to really be where I am now. And I will preface like I'm being humbled every day. There's always so much more room for opportunity and growth. And right now I'm in a really great season, but the seasons always change. And sometimes you just have to be ready to run with those seasons that you're gonna have to just face no matter what.
Yeah.
But funny enough, when I grew up, kind of like looking at things from a big picture, I did tell you at one point, when somebody asked me the question, where are you from? I even like had that conversation earlier before, and I just before this time with each other, I always like laugh because I'm like, oh no, this is such a big question, and it shouldn't be such a loaded question, but it is for me, and it's just part of my story. But I've had the opportunity to live almost like everywhere in the United States growing up, and that really shaped me as a person for the good and for the hard times that went through that. But essentially, like growing up, I was born in Wisconsin and a small town called West Bend, which is just outside of Milwaukee. And so my roots are Midwestern. And then later on, we moved over into the Dallas, Texas market. So I grew up in Dallas for quite some time as like a young child. And through that process, somehow on the map, we moved to Ohio, Tennessee, Arkansas. I mean, I've Oklahoma. I've kind of lost track at this point, and then back to Wisconsin. And my final stop was Colorado, and
Mm.
that's where my dad's side was from originally. And so I was really grateful that was kind of my last stop because I really had the opportunity to kind of like, I mean, when the mountains are your backyard, I mean, it's pretty freaking remarkable when you didn't have that most of your life growing up, if you have access to get out there. And so that's really like between changing schools a lot. I went to 3 different high schools. And so there was a lot of moving around growing up, and people always ask, was my family in the military? And I
Mm.
always say, no, but that's a good point. But no, that wasn't my story. My parents just didn't get along, and they just picked up and moved us so along the way, and we just kind of had to figure out how to be adaptable, how to form relationships at a young age, and how to just learn how to be thrown into different environments with lack of consistency. And during that time, it was very difficult. But
Mm.
also, later on in life, I found that there's such a blessing that came through that, meaning now I have so much more common ground with people and business in my personal life that like now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I lived in that area and we have something to talk about and there's something we can really build upon rapport. And so like I actually think it's one of my greatest like things that could have happened to me. And during that transition with all of the moving at 18, I was like, I'm ready to leave the nest. I'm ready to move out and go start my life, I guess you would say. And so real estate, I always loved real estate. Like I even as a young child, I drew pictures of houses just for fun. Like my dream house, what that would look like. So I was really connected to whatever purpose that was. And maybe that's partly because I moved around so much, thinking about it out loud. Like maybe that's what I was always longing for. But real estate really stuck with me. And when I was 18, you don't know what you're going to do with your life. You're like, I'm just excited to like go for it, but I don't know which direction this life's going to take me. And during that time, I remember I was touring my first apartment and I was so excited. I was like, I can't wait to like move into my own like studio and all the things. And so it was actually out in Littleton, Colorado, which is just like a suburb outside of Denver, metropolis market. And so I remember I was touring my first apartment, and when we were in the golf cart, the leasing agent was with me, and I remember asking her, "How did you get into this business, and what is this business all about?" Because I was like, I want to kind of know more what you're doing over there because it looks cool. And, I'm looking for like a career. And at that point, it wasn't even that I knew it was a career. I was like, she's showing apartments. She's younger. How does she get into this? Maybe I'll connect with her. And that's when she had suggested that there was a local staffing firm at that time in Denver. And she was like, I got this job through this local staffing agency, and I'm sure you could become a leasing agent if you just reach out and apply. So needless to say, I definitely went and I applied, and I got the call back, and they invited me in to interview with them, and I was so stoked. I was like, wow, this is going to be awesome. I don't even know what's going to happen after this, but all I know is like I really am looking for a certain direction in my life, and it seemed to resonate. And so when I interviewed, I originally interviewed to become a leasing agent. Well, they had different plans because when that happened, I remember I got the call back. It was a few days after, and they said, "We like you so much. We want you to work here internally." And so at that point, I guess I wasn't like tied to any direction. I was just 18, so stoked to have like my first girl, like real big job, like working an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And, right, because you retail or the restaurant industry, right, you were working all odd end of hours. And I was like, and I get holidays off. Like, this is awesome. So I decided, sure, I'll join as your guys' receptionist. And so I started with them internally. I was there for about close to 6 years. Yeah, I guess it was close to 6 years. And when I got in there and then really understood and started learning property management, understanding the different communities that we were serving and the people that we were placing within all those properties, that's whenever I realized like, wow, this is really cool. I really love this space because you're tying in people and real estate and you're combining them together. And so when I looked up, I never thought I would become like a supplier or a vendor on that side of the market. And then years later, I kind of found myself like inside that sector. And then early on, when I was there, I really was intentional about who is really exceptional at what they do. Like, and what was it about them that I was like, I'm going to chase them. I want to, essentially, I had a lot of admiration and respect for the VP during that time. And so I was very much, I really admired the way that she connected with people. And I was like, it really stuck out to me. And I remember being like, I'm going to do everything I can to learn from this person because they have something that I really want and I desire. And so I would stay every night when all my friends would text me and be like, we're going out partying, just the things that you would do at that age. I'd be like, I'm still at the office, literally just inside my VP's office. And I have my good old notebook, my pen, and I would just consume like a sponge. I would take everything and I would ask the hard questions. I would say, give me the responsibility. Let me learn from you. But like, I was very intentional. Like I didn't wait for somebody to share that with me. Like I had to go and chase it. And I was really ambitious at a young age. And I think that's partly why I struggled to connect with people at my age, because I felt like, although I was the same age, my maturity level, I guess, was at far different. And because I was super driven and I like had almost like tunnel vision, and I would definitely go out and have a great time with my friends, but I was like, but I'd rather be here. I'd rather be in the office. I'd rather be like learning and growing. And so that's whenever my career really took off. And essentially I spent 6 years there, became the director, oversaw an entire corporate team underneath me. We were doing, I mean, it was just really wild to know like how much we were running on our desks and how many people we were replacing every single week, with like pretty strict deadlines to be able to hire a lot of different people and go through that process. And then at one point I was like, there's more out there for me, and I knew that. And I was like, I always knew I would be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what that would look like. And I'm not gonna lie, like I thought there had to be something sexier than being in recruitment. I was like, I want to be in asset management. I mean, I don't know, right? At that age, I was like, it can't be this. And I'm faith driven. So I'd be like, God, it can't be this. It's got to be something else better. I'll just wait it out, like something else. So I'd be working behind the scenes, like on different projects and trying to roll that out. So I was always thinking of different creative ways of how I'm going to transition. And then I finally like accepted the fact that like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to connect with people, but I have to find a way to take this transactional approach, because it was very transactional. It was very like, you deadline driven. We have to have this type of person in this seat by this day. And it was great in a sense, because you have to have a sense of urgency when it comes to recruiting. You have to love that. And if you don't thrive in that, this is not the space for you, because unfortunately it's very much driven that way. But I really took a step back and I was like, what if I created a brand that was really focused on the people and actually hearing people's stories, and not just like looking at them as another number and how do we close this deal as fast as we can and then we move on, and then how do we actually tie that back into what they're building, which is in real estate and property management and multifamily. And it's really personal. It's the most personal you're ever going to get, is people's homes, people's that go back into after a long day of work, and tying that all together. And that's why I decided I didn't want to do staffing. I really loved working with leaders. And I knew that at an early age. I just felt that there was like a certain connection I had with people. And so that's why the executive search world, I never actually really had any experience other than what I had during that time there. And I remember I told one of my good friends who's been in the industry for a long time, in the real estate recruiting world. She said, Kelsi, why don't you go and work for, I guess a competitor, right? And get some more experience to see if that really is what you wanted. And I just remember looking her straight in the eye and being like, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, I don't want to be formed or put in a box of like, this is the way they've always done it. And then have a very difficult time having to be creative and take myself out of that because of stuff I've learned along the way. I was like, I really want to I vision something very different. I want to have a new flavor, right? And I want to respect the traditions of like how recruiting started in real estate, but I also want to go out into the market and create something, a new generational type of recruitment experience. And that's really basic, guys. Like, it's nothing crazy. It's just really bringing it back to build strategic, meaningful relationships. And over time, if you really believe in what you're doing, those relationships, those people that you've supported along the way, they'll come back 5 years later. They'll remember that you were there for them during that time. And if you really believe and you stick with it, that's where we are 7 years later, building Cory Executive Recruiting. So I know that was a long story, but I think it was really formed me as a person, and I don't regret that decision today. And I couldn't be like more excited to be like where we're heading at this point.
Yeah, no, and I think great story. Few things I think you missed though. You forgot.
Okay, let's hear it.
You started at 18.
I did. Yeah.
You mentioned that. You were with the staffing company for, you said, 6 years?
Yes, right around that time.
Okay. So that puts you at what age?
Yeah, around 24.
Okay. You're 24. This is when people are like leaving college.
Right.
They're getting their first job, like
Right.
professional job out of college. Like, okay. Also, you went to college, dropped out of college, wasn't
Yep.
for you. You
Yes.
stuck with it. These are just things you told me that I think are
Yes.
interesting, additional things. So you really went full force into mentorship, like you shared
Yeah.
with your previous employer and boss, and learned from them. But what I find interesting, you're 24 years old. You're like, now I'm going to start a business.
Yes.
I've
That
never
was
done
crazy.
executive recruiting. Let's do executive recruiting.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of ridiculous when I look back now. I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? And maybe that was just so much like conviction that I just told myself, like, I'm going to find a way. But I think you bring up really great points. Like, yes, at 18, I started my profession. I didn't
Right.
just get a job. Like,
Hmm.
I will say I did have one job though before, and it was not just one job, but a job that I thought maybe there was a future, and it was with Wells Fargo. And
Okay.
and it's because I liked the, everybody dressing up, and I liked the ambiance, right? So I was like, okay, this might be a great entryway into wherever it takes me. And I sucked at it. I was terrible. I was not a good teller.
Okay.
Because I remember we did the panel interview, and it was kind of intimidating. I mean, at 18, you're like going and doing a panel interview, and it wasn't just the panel. You were with, I want to say, at least 15 other people in the room. And like, I remember when the panel was there, they all were at different branches that they were spearheading, and they were looking to bring on their next talent. And we were all at different walks of life. So it wasn't just a certain type of person they were looking for, right? And I remember being in the room being like, okay, like I know I really want to get into the professional world, whatever that's going to look like. And I remember they essentially asked who wants to go first, who wants to be elected to quote interview in front of everybody, including the panel. And I don't know why, but I raised my hand. I'm like, I'll go. I just want to get done with. Like, let's do it. And I remember the phrase that probably got me hired, or at least that's what the hiring manager told me later on. I opened it up saying, like, I'm not here just looking for a job. I'm here to look for a career. I want to actually lean into this, and I hope I can grow through this process, whatever that's going to look like. And like, this is a big deal for me. And this is something I really was hungry about at that time. And I remember I ended up getting an opportunity out in Lakewood, Colorado, and I was working at one of the high rise banks there, and it was a great experience. And then later on, I learned, me and numbers, it just wasn't my love language. I was like, I don't think this is working for me. And, but the connection with the people and like talking to them, and when they came in and having that kind of experience, that really resonated. And so I had to have a hard conversation with my boss during that time. I was like, look, at the end of the day, like I am trying, but I am not like a numbers person. And I can get like, it's just not, I don't think this is going to be the long term fit for me. And I remember it was like, it was difficult because I didn't know that a policy, right, when you're in any type of financial banking is once you give notice, they actually have to walk you out right away. You don't like,
Mm.
you don't stay for 2 weeks. You
Yeah,
get
yeah.
paid for your time as they transition. But that was like, that was a big deal for me because I was like, but wait, like you guys, we're done. Like this is it.
Because
Like
they basically don't want you to steal.
yes, exactly. Like you become a liability at that
Yeah.
point. And I was not prepared for that experience. And so when that happened, I was like in go mode. I was like, okay, I have got to secure my next opportunity. I've got 2 weeks. I've got to figure this out. And that's when I was touring, right? The leasing and everything, all the cars just kind of fell into it. And that's when at 18, when I was interviewing, I just knew that a lot of my peers at that time were naturally going to college. And for me, and I kind of shared this with you, is that I actually think college is very effective for very many people. I personally struggled very much so academically in school. I just didn't learn that way. I
Yeah.
didn't learn sitting behind a desk and being lectured on what we're going to work on. I was so much of a hands on doer. And I knew that, like, college was like absolutely not something I was going to be willing to entertain. And so I knew, though, I wasn't going to want to just settle for mediocrity. I was like, I need to go and figure out my life. Like, I've got a big life ahead of me. And a big part of the reason at 18, like why I had to like figure it out, is because I did not have financial backing. I had nobody. So like that type of grit instilled very young, at a very young age, and being adaptable. I will be honest with you, like, and I'm gonna write a post about this because I was like, it's time. I gotta share my full story. But growing up, because 18 was really critical, like you bring to the table, and the college, we struggled financially as a household. My parents were divorced. We were always one check away from being evicted. It was there was moments in the season that were good, and my parents did the absolute best that they could during that time. And I appreciate everything they did, but we struggled, and we struggled really hard, like high school years. That's when it got really difficult. And I was really humbled during that time, to the point that like my family and I, we were evicted. And it was a terrible experience. It's not something that I wish on anybody. And yet we experience that across the board in this industry. Like it happens to people for any type of circumstance. I've been through that, where literally your stuff's thrown off the balcony, and like you literally have just what's left on your back. You don't know where you're going to go. And that was like really, I don't know, I'm getting emotional, but it was like a really critical point in my life. And I remember to the point, like, we would share like beds because we didn't have enough space, and everybody lived in the one place in an apartment, to the point that I slept on the hallway floors in my own house. So, you like really learn, and like your school lunches were all that you got to eat that day. And so like, that is like really what I would say was my best superpower growing up. And it was very difficult, and I don't wish it upon anybody, but it's just my story, and I own it. Like that is me, and it made me who I am today. So at 18, when I left, I was like, I've got to freaking make this happen, because if I don't, I'm going to fall hard. And what I mean by that, like, I'm going to go homeless if I don't figure this out. I didn't have the luxury of being like, I've got to put a call into my family and be like, hey, I'm having the greatest time in my life, not sure what direction I'm going to go. I don't really have a job. It was like, you go out and make your life happen, and you go out and persevere, because everything that has led you up to this point, don't waste it, because I never want to be in that situation again. And that is really what formed me as a person. And so college, for me, I just knew that it just didn't resonate with me during that time. And I needed to like, I really was ambitious to like, it motivated me, then discouraged me, right? Because a lot of people in those circumstances, you can go the other way, easy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen it happen to a lot of people. I was really grateful that I leaned into a different direction, and mentorship, like you brought up. I had to figure out what does resonate with me, to be able to learn and grow and to level up as a person and as a professional. And that was through mentorship. That was through finding different people that I really respected, admired, and I chased them. And I was super intentional. And I was like, I will stay here every single night for however long it takes to understand and to acquire this wisdom. And then I've got to figure this out. And I just always knew that at one point, like I said, I knew there was something bigger out there. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I had such a burning conviction that never wavered. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out, because this is what I was built for. I was built to go build my future, whatever that looks like. And I wanted to go build my dreams. And I, not only that, it later kind of morphed into, how can I help build other people's dreams? Because entrepreneurship's not the only way. Like there's people who are like, I just want to level up in my next job, or I want to finally go for that opportunity that like really aligns with me, or I'm sick of this company culture that's toxic. And I want to be in an environment where I feel like I'm valued and I'm thriving as a person, because you know deep down that there's a misalignment. And so I knew that like people, real estate, multifamily, all of it came, and I just kind of grew up, I guess, throughout that time, like leaning into the business. So I think you brought up really good points, and thank you for acknowledging it, because it's easy to just kind of forget about really the big motivating reason why I'm like here today.
Yeah. I mean, when I would see you posting, I was like, oh, she's got to be roughly my age. And you're 30. Let's
Yeah.
acknowledge your current age. It's
Thank
okay
you.
to know people's age. 30
Yeah.
years old, and you've put grit in, you've put your time in, you've been at it in your having your own business for
Almost
6 years,
7 years.
7 years
Almost
almost.
7 years. Yep. We're heading
Yeah.
into our 7th year, which I will say, like the first 5 years, I even kind of mentioned this to you, and I could get it wrong. I don't know if it was Elon Musk or who said it, but it resonates with me still to this day where those first 5 years genuinely felt like what he had shared. It's like staring into the great abyss while chewing on a piece of glass. It is very difficult. It is very difficult. You have almost everything. Like I was even talking to my husband about this last night. When you go out and build a business, everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different financial backing. We bootstrap this. Like I bootstrap this 100%. I haven't still to this day taken out one loan, and I'm really proud about that because that means there's no other outside influencers coming in that dictate
Mhm,
how I want to represent the brand and how I
mhm,
show up serving my community, which I think is really important for me personally. And so while we were talking about that, it's like you have every odd against you of failing. You make one bad decision because, right, you have to get it right most of the time, and you're not going to get it right. But are you willing enough to take those risks, have the appetite to take those risks, accept whatever happens, happens, right? Because there's no like true guide. But yeah, there's lots of different tips and tricks, but like you have to like live it. You have to be in it and you have to live your own story. It doesn't matter how many books you read, how many people you talk to, you have to put the time in and you have to get bruised. I mean, you have to get beat up during this process. And it's honestly, at least for me, it's the conviction that never wavers because
mm,
you will have days, you will get those calls, you will have everything going against you. You made the wrong move at the wrong time. You hired and scaled too fast. Now you have a lot on the line with payroll. I mean, there's so much that goes into behind the scenes. And that's why like I show up, I share my wins and I'm not afraid to do that. You want to know why? Because I know I've learned now, probably 2 years ago, I finally accepted like things come in seasons and
mm.
you better enjoy it because when that season's good, you learn to love it and respect it and appreciate and savor it because that has an expiration date. Because that
Mm,
next season is about to challenge you. It's about to like say you're either gonna level up or you're gonna like back out. What are you gonna do? You're going to be dealt cards that you hadn't dealt with before and dealt with some that you've dealt prior. And that season is very difficult. It is very difficult because you still have a job to do. You still have to show up for your teams. You still have to show up for your clients. You still have to show up and share, right? Like the parts of you that like operate those businesses. But at the end of the day, like you have a lot of stress at night of what's going to happen. We all do, regardless if you own a business or not. It doesn't matter. We all have that responsibility and we all go through different seasons, and those are the times that like weather you, big time, and you just got to get through that storm because the cycle will come back. And I will say the last 9 months have been what I've always dreamt of in my whole life of why I built this and why I stuck with it. And I'm really proud of that because it has been very difficult. It has been great, but it has been difficult. And now I'm like, wow, I am so grateful that I did not back out. And honestly, last year, I have not shared this with anybody. Last year, around this time of the year, January, it was January, February, I was the closest to I'd ever been of being like, I've had it. I'm
mm.
done. I can't do it anymore. The stress, all the things, becoming a new mom, learning how to, to adapt into all of that. It was a lot. And I
Yeah.
was like, when is it going to be the break that you see in the cycle, right? Where it just takes off. And I was the closest I'd ever been willing to back out. And it was like a really gut wrenching feeling because it's your baby. I mean, you like You put your sweat and equity, lots of tears, everything into this thing because you really believe that you're helping people, you're really adding value, you're really showing up, and you are like investing thousands of hours into these people. And I'm not kidding. Like after that, I would say it was around May. It was like, holy crap. I have like literally dreamt of this my whole life. And ever since then, and don't get me wrong, you don't still have bad days, but like it's been the best 9 months of my entire career, let alone my life, and the most fulfilling. And it's thanks to all of you. Like I would not be here today. That's not just a saying. Like I would not be here today if I did not have the people supporting me along this journey, because I care about everybody I talk to on the phone. I really do put my heart and soul into it. And I think people feel that genuineness when they talk to me. And I don't look at people as a transaction. I don't look at like things of saying, if I don't see dollar signs in your forehead, then like you're not worth my time. I've actually changed and challenged it. And I've had people say, oh, you're not going to make it. You know, this is all about profitability. How do you put more people in those seats? And I'm like, that's fine. That's what works for you. But like, I'm going a completely different path because I do believe that the people I've invested my time in, and it has happened, especially this past year. And it has always happened, but like even more so, they have come back and they have signed deals with me and we've moved forward to build their teams. And it is like the most rewarding, authentic, like years later. And they're like, I still remember you from the time you showed up in my life. And now they're showing up for me. And I'm like, this is what it's about. Like, this is what it's really about, is really connecting with people. And that's why I love real estate.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable too, because so often we see people doing work seemingly, successful and
Right.
showing where they are, and it's like there's so much behind it, right?
Right.
So there's a story behind all of us. There's also a lot of work that's behind a lot of this, and people don't see it, right? So they just say, "Oh, yeah, they're very shiny, polished, whatever," and
Right.
uh,
Life looks perfect. And
yeah,
I think it's because I've spent so many, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, I spent thousands of hours these last 7 years on calls and just listening and opening up space to hear people's real vulnerable stories. And it's such an honor. Really, if you think about it, people show up, and if you build the right type of relationship and you open up that space, people will tell you really what's going on in their life. And I find that to be such an honor that people trust me with such really critical and really vulnerable information. And then something beautiful comes from that. And I think like it's so true that it's like it's awesome to see all the growth and all this stuff, but it really wouldn't be here. And just like even you inviting me to the show to share your platform, to share my story. I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, it's people's livelihoods. I never lose sight of that we do. And the work we do when we place high level leaders in these seats, it's people's livelihoods. And it's also, everybody has a different timeline of like when their leniency is until they transition, because we all have families to provide for. And I've never lose sight on that. And everybody has a different path of how long that's going to take. But like that is like why we're so mission driven in what we do here.
yeah. Well, and so we have a few topics, and they are what drive you in your business.
Cool.
Recruiting and hiring being one of them.
Yes.
What is your guys' approach within your executive search
Yeah.
company for that process?
Yes. So anytime we take on a new client or any client that we have, we really have to make sure, one, there's alignment there, meaning we want to know the good, the bad, but we really want to know the ugly. Because at the end of the day, every company, I don't care who you are, even us, right? There's no perfect company, just like there's no perfect candidate. It doesn't exist. We all have imperfections. So we lead with transparency with our clients and say, the more honest and transparent you are about what's going on in your organization, why is this opportunity open? What does this look like? And then how do we craft a solution together? It's not for judgment, And it's not for holding it against anybody. It's to say, okay, from a PR standpoint, this is the direction we're going to go. From this is the type of leader we know that needs to be in this type of seat, right? Because every team dynamic across the country and how they lead teams is going to look different. Every type of community has its own challenges. So we have to make sure we are getting that type of information. And then I would say also being straight shooters. Like we have that as like one of our major value systems, is that we're not yes ma'am, yes sir people. So if you are looking for that, that's okay. We don't align. What I mean by that is we're experts in our craft. We have spent thousands of hours in this space. We know what's going on in the marketplace. We understand. Leverage that. Let us help you build the best teams in the market. If we really come alongside each other, we're in true partnership and we can make some really incredible things happen because we're your brand ambassadors. And who you choose to partner with and recruit for is everything, more than you realize. Because if you don't get the right partner out there that's representing your brand on the front lines, guess what? That will never leave them of what their experience was with that group. So I always say you should be considering different groups. You should be methodical. This is as important as anything else. We talk about people being the most important asset. Your recruitment partner, or like how you have your internal talent acquisition team and setting them up for success, is probably one of the most important things you're ever going to do. Because if you don't get the right people in the right seats, or it's okay if you make errors, or right, you're never going to get it right 100%. That's not true. It's really leaning into making those executive decisions, making sure that you are looking at what's going on in the market, and then make sure you take action and you're empowering and you are actually leading the way to say, I'm hiring this person to do this job because they're going to have the autonomy to go out and make things happen, right? And we don't see that very often. We always hear about it, but then people get into their seats and then there's no autonomy and then things don't work out and they wonder why. And then I would say lastly is culture. We're very culture driven. And what that means is culture is really about how is it that people show up within your organization. And it doesn't mean that there's not diversity and things like that. It's just, right, if you know that you like more of an institutional feel, a New York City vibe, right? That's a different experience than a startup entrepreneurial environment. They're completely different and there's no right or wrong. It's just what resonates with you and who's going to really cohesively join the team and add the value, right? And not be like a mixture of oil and water. We want people to be complementary when they enter into that. And so culture is everything. Us understanding your culture, we're your culture ambassadors, and we will be the ones to protect your brand on both inside and out. And so we do that even when we talk to candidates in the marketplace, right? We also represent them in a sense. So I think that's like at a high level how we go through that process in our vetting system and I'm really proud of this, but we have a strong closing ratio of 1 to 3 people we put in front of you typically leads to an offer. That doesn't mean we didn't have behind the scenes hundreds to thousands of conversations and how we vet them out. But by the time they get in front of you, I had better have done my job to make sure that I really hit home, because your time is everything. That's why you are paying big fees, right? That's why you're making that investment into this component, because it's my responsibility to understand, really get into the trenches with my team and help lead them along the way. And we're going to bring the best people in front of you. And if there is like some type of obstacles, which happens in every single market, it's our responsibility to also come to you with not just telling you what we're seeing inside the market, but we provide solutions. This is what I would advise us to do. This is the obstacles we see. If we want to get this role filled within this deadline, this is what we would recommend. And that's the best type of relationships and partnerships we have with our clients across the country.
No, I like your approach. And how is it that you how do you learn the culture of other companies?
Yes. So that's kind of like the big thing, right? Of course, you have online reviews, you have all of that. But really how it happens is that's what I think the biggest advantage is that we have is because we spend thousands of hours of our time over the years hearing everybody's stories, you learn real-time information from real people and all the data. right? And there's always people, new leadership coming in, changes happening in the marketplace, people that have just left, people that, right? So it's not like we look at one type of person and say, okay, we're going to bank on that because that was their experience. No, it actually helps us have a bigger conception. And then also, what is the experience like when we work alongside them? Because that tells you a lot. And if you're finding there's a lot of roadblocks or lack of communication, no transparency, things like that, right? That is showing us who your culture is through that process. Because if you're not trusting and empowering your teams to make these decisions, or if there's just a long delay in making any type of decisive decision making in that process, or you say one thing and you're showing up different when you interview candidates, right? Because we do debriefs on both sides of the market. That's why it could be very advantageous. And one of like your secret weapons to have is if you get the right person in there as an executive headhunter, you can gain and leverage all our intel and our knowledge because we put the work in, because we're entrenched in the market. People trust us. And that's another big part of our brand reputation. I always tell people we've built a really solid brand out there. Over the years, people are waiting for our call because we have built so much trust in the marketplace. People, a lot of people we work with are high-level leaders and they're very confidential. It's hush-hush. They don't know who to trust. You know, they can't even be seen at a coffee shop, you know, with somebody that's largely why we don't go to a lot of events, because a lot of people want to get to know you, but they can't be seen with you because they're like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like they're in these weird transition phases. And it's very high profile because most of the people we talk to are VP to C-suite level and partners. And so, right, there's very high visibility. And so I'm really proud to say that like we help serve that whole like underground community as well. And I think that's like one of the most biggest compliments I ever get on the phone call is, you know, I didn't know who to trust, but I knew that I wanted to put a call into you. And it's like, wow, thank you so much for trusting us.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great compliment. And one of the things that you just mentioned, and I had written down, is in the time you've had your business, you've never once gone to an industry event.
Yes, I know. So I'm going to compartmentalize this year. I'm like putting it out there into the universe, like, yes, I'm going. But I never shared that with anybody. But yes, up until this point, networking is what you make of it. I know
Yeah,
I am an introvert at heart, or an ambivert, or whatever that other one we talked about.
ambivert,
Ambivert.
ambivert.
And so I knew that like I am not that person. I wish I was, and I'm gonna put a post out about this. But I'm not that person who's like, sign me up for every live event there is in person. I want to shake as many hands as I can. I want to be on the stage. I wish I was that person, but I'm not. I'm not that type of person. So I had to learn how to network that really resonated with me and then maximize that. And I'm like, that's it. So I've never once met any of our clients, gone to any industry events, and yet I can tell you right now it's kind of wild, but like you can build a really incredible brand, but you can find your own voice and your own way of how you connect with people. And for me, it's one-on-ones. It's really getting like behind the scenes and then figuring out how do you really duplicate that process. And so, but this year we're going to apartmentalize. We're really excited.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know we're going to really look forward to that.
Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to meet you there and so many of these industry leaders that I've had the opportunity to know for years. So I'm like, I'm really looking forward to it in June.
Yeah, and it's going to be great. You've been on Boss Talks. You're going to be able to go to the Boss Brunch as an alum of Boss Talks. So super excited to have you there.
Awesome.
And just meet you in general. But it's going to be a good time. I resonate so much with that. Like, if I go to more than like 3 events in a year,
Yeah.
by the end of the year, I'm exhausted. Like, it's like it compounds. I don't understand. There's people that are putting these posts, badges of honor, where they've traveled. They've gone on like, I don't know. I'm exaggerating, but maybe not. 90 flights.
Yeah. And kudos to them. They're incredible. But they're not us. Like, we can't do that.
But I am so tired seeing that. Like,
My 18-month-old kicks my butt. I'm like, I have no extra space right now for that. But like those people, I'm like, that is incredible. And I wish
That
I
is
had even an
incredible.
ounce of that, but I don't. And you don't
Yeah.
either. So we're like,
Well, but I think it's important. Yeah, it's cool to hear how people are wired and like it's different.
yes.
But it's also awesome to see and hear stories like yours where you're like, I've never been to an event once.
Yeah.
Look at my business. It is
Yes.
I'm doing well. Like it
Yes.
took a lot of effort, but it was a different effort. It just didn't mean I was traveling all the time. It didn't mean I
It
was
wouldn't have felt authentic, if I would have gone into, sure, I could have done 100 things and that people invite you to, but like for me, it was like networking in general is not
mm,
really dived into, well, what does that mean? When you hear networking, for the extroverts, sure. I mean, they're like, heck yeah, count me in. But for a lot of the high level leaders I work with, and you say, I need you to go out and network, they're like, kind of panic mode. Like, what do you mean? I have to, what does that mean? And we're only really educated about one way of networking. But the reality is, you make it what is your superpower? What's your superpower? You lean into it, you own it, and you make it happen. And so I'm here to tell you for the people that are like, I wish I had the capacity to do 100 events a year, but I just don't worry. That's okay. Even if you're looking for your new opportunity, you can have very strategic ways. You go from chess and you don't go from checkers to chess, right? You have to be able to lean into that and you create your own path.
yeah. I mean, this show is a large part of exactly that.
Yes.
I
Brilliant.
I
Brilliant.
it's
Really.
my way of networking, building relationships, building community, elevating others. Like those are all things I appreciate. And so
Yes.
as a part of this, and my wiring doesn't allow me to go to 1,000 events. I just can't.
Yes.
It's exhausting. I won't be there. I won't have enough. Sometimes I still don't have enough energy for my family.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it's
true
like,
thing.
what would I would be a grumpy, angry person all the time.
Yes. I think it's honestly brilliant, Evan, the way that you guys have set up your podcast, that you still put it live, you allow other people to engage and be a part of this is brilliant. You have really mastered what you know and inherently have like just leaned into. And we encourage, right? Like you and I are telling people, we encourage you. Go and figure it out. Try what really resonates with you. And I promise you, you're going to be so happy you did. Instead of like saying it's either all or nothing, you got to figure it out. And you're only going to figure that out if you show up and you put yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's so important when it comes to talking to a recruiter or interviewing with people. It is finding that right fit, right?
Right.
And like the right culture. And I've actually been in a sales role or first right out of college. It wasn't a culture fit. I'll
Sure.
just be honest. Like
Yeah.
I figured it out for 5 years enough to have a job, but eventually I just left because it was just I don't can't tell you how many times they told me that I was like a square peg in a round hole, basically. Like
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
was in sales, and I am an introvert, and so we'd have live trainings and events, and
Sure.
everybody's like really rah rah and like salespeople, and I was not that person.
Yeah. They're like, who's
And
this
they're
guy? Who brought Evan on
yeah,
stage?
but they were always like, "You don't fit." I'm like, "But I'm doing the job."
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. I think it's I mean, gosh, I wish I could it's funny that we could talk about all these things forever and it's been really fun having this conversation with you and I love hearing your story and I can't wait to see you at Apartmentalize and hopefully we chat many times before that. But again,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you were able to share this time with me and vice versa and I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. I'm glad you said yes. It was short notice. Again, only met a few. Maybe it was mid December. We had an interaction through a post
Yeah,
I made or
sure.
something like that. But super glad to initially meet you, be able to talk to you, and get to know you. So, thanks for saying yes.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate Evan.
Yeah. Well, just like Kelsey jumped in and on short notice. came on Boss Talks, shared her story, got vulnerable, and really shared her passions and what motivates her and drives her. Literally, you too can. Like, I
Yes.
love having people from all parts of the industry on Boss Talks. This isn't about high level leaders. This isn't about people that have
Right.
been in the industry for 30 years, that are making it as a CEO or a president.
Right.
They can make it on here too. I love talking to them as well. But everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everybody is motivated in a way that gets them to the next level, makes them a leader in where they are. And I would love to know your story and share it with other people. So let's let other people know who you are and elevate all the bosses of the
Yes.
multifamily industry.
I love it. You guys are not, I mean, if you have the opportunity to be on the show, just do it. Who cares? Like, it's not about a title, is what I'm at least hearing from Evan. It's not about the title. It's not about if you own your own business. It's not about like how much money you make. Everybody has their own superpower and they got to share it with this platform because you never know. I always say like you can meet your next best friend, a new colleague, a new mentor, your newest opportunity might be right around the corner. There's so much value that you're bringing, Evan, and I think it's absolutely incredible what you and your team are doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well,
Yeah.
everybody, that's been Boss Talks for this week. We have another great guest next week, so make sure you tune in. Thanks for those that are chiming in at the
Yes.
end and watching and giving Kelsi kudos and for listening in. If you didn't catch the whole thing, go back and immediately watch it because it'll be available. But I will see you next week for another great episode. And thanks for watching.
Awesome. See you guys. Thank you.
Can't see my button.